Hello there, yes. Bit of sun, bit of heat. Might actually turn into a bit of summer. That would be quite nice, actually, for a change. Right, anyway, we come to number 4 on our list of how to grift. And this one's outraged. You must learn how to become outraged. It has a number of subsets of rules to this one. Firstly, nothing is too trivial or distant from your own life to become outraged at, okay? So long as it's at the right target. Secondly, you need to ignore things that you really should be outraged at as just simply being woke concerns. And lastly, what you need to do targeted outrage at things that your owners want to manipulate. So we end up with targeted outrage. And I think it's worthwhile sort of taking an immediate lesson in useful outrage. It's my favourite grifter, Andre Walker, who was in action this week and on absolutely top form. Let's have a look at that.
Well, what's happened now, and it's something called hate clicks, where deliberately you offend the public in order to get more coverage for your particular product. Well, Costa have done that with the double mastectomy. Hugely offensive to women, hugely embarrassing, and something that's going to really, really upset them. I want to strike out something for the women that have suffered from breast cancer. I want to strike out for the women that have gone through all that heartache. I want to strike one out for the children who've really care about their mothers and have lost them. And I want to strike one out for the husbands who've lost their wives and the families that have been ripped apart. I'm not going to bother with this product anymore. I think that Costa Coffee is an absolute waste of time.
What?
I think that they have absolutely disgraced this country, and I think that they should absolutely get out of it. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you this piece of the Costa Coffee cup, because I am damn sick of the way that decent, hard-working mums in this country are humiliated and damaged by people who arrive wearing sports bras when they don't need them, when they've got their Doc Martens with all sorts of trans adverts all over them, and most of all, when they make the double mastectomy, one of the most horrendously embarrassing, hurtful, painful and sickening things that can happen to a woman. When they make it a sign of masculinity, they can bog off, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, well, that's serious, isn't it? Hate clicks. Imagine that. Using the subject of women's breasts in an outrageous fashion. You may have noticed some women's breasts there. They're often prominently displayed. Let's see those breasts in action again, shall we? And again. And perhaps again. Yes, indeed. Let's not forget our audience into hate clicks. Yes. Anyway, that was a brilliant example of absolutely faux outrage. I've read up on the Costa van, and I think it's actually just one van. As far as I can make out, it's not a huge advertising campaign. I think it's just literally one van in London. So, there you go. Maximum outrage. Something that, let's face it, if it wasn't over everyone else's Twitter feed, Andre would never have seen it. But everyone else is cross, so he has to be cross as well. It's quite funny at the end because he apologises to the GB News cleaners for having to clean up the coffee. And I was thinking, willing to bet they're women. Yes, and, we have, I guess in the British media we're kind of used to this idea of use of the word fury. We get lots of fury. There's always fury at something. Fury, 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 fury. But it never is really furious. It's just people that kind of mildly concerned, even if that. But it's worthwhile sort of like thinking about the actual monetary stuff that goes on here. GB News is owned by a consortium of what amount to hedge fund managers, many of whom have big shares in petrochemical businesses. And, oddly, GB News tends to take a very anti or sceptical climate stance. At best, for example, you'll end up with things like Patrick Christie's, who gets very outraged at eco-terrorists, like people that sit quietly on a roof for half an hour, or maybe just sit in a road and are mildly disruptive. Yeah, outraged at that. Mike Graham from Talk TV, owned by Rupert Murdoch, is always outraged by the BBC. No matter what they do, it's just always outrageous, whatever they do. But, you know, I can't conceive that Mike would be that realistically, unless someone else in his Twitter sphere had pointed this stuff to him, he would never have heard of it, and therefore would not be outraged, even if he is, which he isn't, let's face it. And perhaps the ultimate going there level of hypocrisy in terms of faux outrage is these two. It's Lawrence Fox, who's always concerned about children but is quite happy to throw his own under a bus one way or another, or indeed Dan Wootton, who is always outraged by other people's sexuality. It's outrageous that Dan Wootton's outraged, isn't it? You can't make it up, can you? But underneath all this, there's a really strong underlying point that needs to be made, is that all of these people are never outraged at things that they really should be. Yeah. You know, child poverty. Climate change. The economy. Inflation. Brexit. COVID. You name it. They're never outraged at those things that realistically do have a really deep impact in people's lives. I mean, I admit there are perhaps one or two crossovers, but realistically, very few. Whereas they will keep you outraged with their clickbait on breasts. Yeah, it's them again. Yeah. And they will then be outraged that other people do exactly what they do. Such a level of outrage. I'm not really outraged by these people at all. They are simply making a living. But I am outraged at the machine that trundles its way across the media landscape like this. And it's getting a lot worse. It is getting a lot worse. To label Greenpeace sitting on a roof as eco-terrorists is outstanding use of language, let's face it. Just a minor protest, and yet they're terrorists. Stunning. Anyway, let's think of those breasts again. And talking of breasts and pears and everything else, we should also bear in mind Dan Wootton and Lawrence Fox. And if you want to be outraged at something, I think realistically it's quite easy to be outraged at those two. Anyway, do have a lovely Thursday. I'm going to very much look forward to my weekend, I think. I'll come up with number 5 on our Grifty list tomorrow, and we'll probably do a sort of mass overview where we can get you to mesh all of them together, just so you can be good at it too. Yeah. Anyway, having learnt all the tricks of the trade, I'm expecting a cut. Enjoy.